Hi everybody, I'm Jens Johansson. Welcome to the Building Doctor Show. We are recording this December version of the show for you because it falls during the week of Christmas. And we want you spending time with family, friends, and loved ones, and then binge watching this after Christmas time. So, thanks for attending today. It's going to be the best of 2022. We are sure you're going to love it. We've worked hard on putting together all the best clips and things of this entire year's worth of show. Typically, the format is a live webinar, so you can ask your questions live and have them answered, and or submit them throughout the month. So with this recorded show, please put your questions in the comments, and we'll get to those in following episodes, so stay tuned for that. So if you like this episode, click on the link below and your registration will give you access to all future live webinars, as well as the past ones that you can watch if you really found something useful here. It'll also have access to monthly publications and our educational resource library that really is helpful to board members and property managers running their buildings better. That's what we want to achieve here. One more thing, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, give it a share, give us a shout out, forward it to your friends or other board members so that we can reach more people. So, thanks for watching, and as we're celebrating the end of the year, we appreciated you feeding into this year, and we look forward to some exciting things in 2023. Happy New Year.
My builder is telling me that because the home is stucco and the stucco has some cracking in pinholes, I just need to repaint the home and seal up the holes and cracks. I don't know what to believe because it seems like the window was improperly installed and the builder, they don't want to be responsible. So that's their way out of it. They're also blaming things on the homeowner's lack of maintenance and just kind of pushing back. They don't want to do anything. And what do we do there? So stucco is awesome. I love it. It's a very durable coating. It has a 50 to 80 year lifespan. It's right. It's kind of cement, right? It's a combination of cement, sand, and lime. As long as it doesn't start cracking and fracturing and getting things going on, it'll last a long time. The key to stucco is making sure that you've got good drainage under the stucco system. So does it have 2 layers of building paper? That's a requirement. So building paper is your weather resistive barrier or your building's raincoat. And then is it looking good? Does it have little cracks in it, big cracks? Are these cracks coming out of window openings, things like that? And are there other penetrations in the wall, windows, vents, things like that, that could be leaking into the wall? So the question was, I think my window's also improperly installed and leaking. How do we check this, and can we just paint over it? The stucco marketing painting industry in the 80s came out with what's called an elastomeric paint. We actually use that on deck coatings right now, but it's very waterproof, water resistant, and it keeps water from penetrating in. But if you have a stucco system that's gotten kind of old and cracked and tired and has some water underneath it, once you coat it with that, you're wrapping your building in a plastic bag because there's no permeance. So breathing or air transmission passing through the system. So the building sweats to death and rots from the inside out because you've coated it with the wrong product. The mid 80s, this coating was very popular, Pacific Northwest, Canada, and it caused lots of problems in there. So the coating was the problem, and the pre-water leaks getting sealed right up was the problem. Today, we've got good coatings that are breathable. We really like the 100% silicone coating. It's very breathable. Silicone's a great water-resistant barrier. Comes in lots of colors, gives the building kind of a sheen, like you've armor-alled it, makes it look shiny. Think like paint. Exterior paint works just fine. It breathes. You can paint it, all the way up to coating being a spectrum. So coatings are super heavy duty paint. So more expensive, more robust. A lot of times they'll have a warranty and things like that. So there's options there on what you can seal that up with. Now, can you seal up the cracking and pinholes? So that's the value judgment there you have to make a decision on. Little nicky pinholes, yes, your coating will cover those for the most part. Little cracks, yes, it'll bridge that. Maybe there's manufacturer's information about about sealing them or applying some different manufactured products. Some of them have a crack sealer, etc. Be careful about being able to see if they take their finger and smear it on there. That was a technical noise, by the way. So they're caulking the crack shut and then you paint it. It's just like you do that to a wall in your bedroom, and you'll see this blah going down the exterior of the wall. And you might, depending on the color, you might see some of these things jump out at you. So it might look awful. Here's a big crack. So that's not a small hairline crack. That is a big crack. I've got something inserted in there, some kind of probe or something, but you're not going to be able to bridge that kind of crack. So this stucco is leaking, big cracks, and causing water damage in beneath it. The builder says I can just paint the stucco. Okay, what's going on under the stucco? Remember, we talked about trapped water and potential damage. Do a little investigation to kind of see what's going on. And do you see any problems under there? Because you could spend a whole bunch of money and coat this stucco system and you'd just be sealing in the rot. You'd be sealing in the bad stuff. You would essentially take your coating money and throw it in the dumpster because you just have to do all this again. I know RCW 6455 says we have to have an inspection done before starting work. Almost. But can we just have the contractor inspect it? No. If we hire an inspector, what are their duties or roles? Okay, let's talk about this. So they have to do an inspection before. They don't have the budget. They're referencing a law or a standard there. They've got it a little twisted, and I don't blame them. It's a confusing thing, but we're going to walk through that. So before starting the work, this gets back to, remember our stucco talk about, let's look what's under here. In this roof replacement, let's jump up into the attics, make sure the attic ventilation is working correctly. Let's poke around a little bit, make sure some soffits aren't damaged so that we can set these damage allowances or contingencies accurately instead of jumping into a job and just getting change orders left and right from the contractor when they have to do the work that we could have found out about by doing a little inspection. So let's jump into law. This is where I'm going to rub some people the wrong way here a little bit. Here's what the law says. All multi-unit residential buildings. Doesn't say condo. Doesn't say apartment. Multi-unit residential building. Weird. It says all multi-unit buildings shall have the building enclosure inspected by a qualified inspector during the course of initial construction and during rehabilitative construction. The building enclosure. If you're replacing the siding, you got to have some inspections during construction. The information is written plainly. Now, let's talk about the inspectors and their qualifications and what they can and can't do. Remember, the question was, can't the contractor just do that? Okay, so the qualified building envelope enclosure inspector, they can be the architect or engineer of record. So that means the person who stamped the plans. So architects or engineers can stamp the building envelope plans. Or another person with 6 things: substantial and verifiable training and experience, or up to 4, in building enclosure design and construction. Here's what the law says, regardless what some guy on the internet says. Here's what the law says in Washington. Pay attention to it, and let's not get in trouble because we hired the wrong person. But read this, understand it, understand who is doing your inspections and why, and understand it needs to be in during rehabilitative construction. So, okay, hi, we noticed the wall and medicine cabinets in the downstairs bathroom was wet. Discovered there was a leak behind the wall in the upstairs bathroom somewhere above the tub. I can't see exactly where it's coming. We're part of an association. The bylaws indicate we own everything from the paint out, meaning into the unit, and the association, owns the drywall in to the wall. So technically this leak is inside the wall because it's coming through. It should be on them. Okay. So who should go fix this? Who should call their insurance company first? What if we have 3 or 4 of these right now where it's like my upper ceiling in the bedroom has brown water stains on it coming from the roof, but the association or the board is ignoring me and telling me to paint it. And we're just like, oh boy. Okay, so let's stop. Let's break this thing down. Okay, it's coming from the tub. Okay, so are we unit 201 is above 101 in a stack? We've all seen that. Is it kind of interior? Did the kids play in the tub and splash water all over and cause a little flood? Did the toilet overflow? We call those resident issues. Did the resident do something upstairs that flooded the downstairs? Typically in that type of environment, their two insurance companies are talking to one another and they need to figure it out. If it's an exterior wall and water is flowing down the wall on medicine cabinet and it's an exterior wall, we need to rule out if this is an exterior issue, like our windows that were leaking in the stucco pictures, like our roof, or the roof is leaking, like in my example I just talked about. Is this coming from an exterior element that is controlled by the master association, like building on enclosure? Then we might have a little bit of a different issue. It's not a resident issue. They're not splashing water around. The water is coming down the siding. So in that instance, the association should be the ones fixing and trying, maintaining, getting their master policy in there, et cetera. So you kind of have to start separating these things out. Maybe it's a plumbing pipe issue, bad piping, bad draining. Somebody screwed something through a plumbing pipe and caused a leak. So all those things come into play here a little bit. And we've got the definitions of common element, limited common element, and your own stuff from the paint in. Your manager should be going through some of the bylaws and helping you understand that. The board should be helping you understand what is their responsibility and what is yours. And then if you have a neighbor to neighbor thing, hey, your kids are causing water to be dripped all over the place. Now, here's the problems. When we see the master policy step in, the master policy, they're a big, here's $15 million just in case this project burns down. So they've got a big deductible. They have, so they start with a $25,000 deductible. And so they clean up your mess, but they say you owe everything because the deductible comes out of your pocket. So there's no coverage there for you, the unit owner anyway. And so you kind of get stuck on that. Sometimes the master policy will come in, they'll then subrogate back against the other policy. But it's a complicated thing. So sometimes you need some help steering the path, because every single one of these, obviously, adjusters and insurance companies will say, no, not our fault. No, not our fault. So get those bylaws out. If the bylaws are unclear, get some rules written about what happens, because we see these little floods. And after you have the dry out guys and sucking the rugs out and pulling some drywall out and doing all that stuff, you're talking $25,000 to $30,000 per leak. And so there's something to pay attention to, and let's not get burned by a big deductible. The root of this question is, how do we work with a bid that's 6 months old? I don't want to start a project and halfway through get hit with the excuse of the contractor needs more money. But what happens when you've given a bid and 6 months goes by and then the client comes back and says, okay, last November, you said you could do it for $1 million. Okay, get started. What happens, Brian?
Well, over the last year, we've had a lot of projects that those long lead times and those delays getting started have triggered having to go back and reprice. And I've seen numerous jobs that after they bid have gone up 6, 8, 10%. And we've had to go back to the owner and say, sorry, we can't do it for the price we bid it at 6, 8 months ago because these costs have gone up.
Right. Yep.
So the question becomes, Jens, a lot of people ask, well, should we wait? And the reality is, over the last 10, 20 years, I don't think I can name a single period in time where waiting was actually beneficial for a client.
Right.
We don't know what the future holds, but based on the past, those that waited have actually gotten into worse conditions. Even in the housing bubble where pricing was very high, if they waited, then the bubble burst, but they couldn't get financing. So there were other challenges that ended up stopping the projects. you want to get the financing first, because if you bid it first, you're exposed to that long lead time. But once you've bid the project, what we want to do is get a letter of intent to start the ordering of the windows. It doesn't have to expose a homeowners association to the full cost impact, but being able to order those windows and know that they're locked in is the first thing. And then move to the contract and get that contract worked out and issued as quickly as possible. Because as soon as an association issues a contract to me, the contractor, I can go lock in all of my subcontractors and I can lock in all my materials, and they're going to go lock them in with their suppliers. And then the HOA is not exposed to any of those material impacts unless they change their mind about something. If you decide you want the pink windows instead of the white ones, then suddenly you just open that door again. So lock in what your decisions are and the contracts, and we can hold the pricing.
The client is asking if we've had a visual inspection and we know we need to completely reside the building, why do we need an invasive investigation before we start the work?
If you started out with a targeted repair, you may have some good information there, having taken apart some of the components. Perhaps you're seeing that there are issues, and that's why you're expanding it to a full repair. Those details would really matter, though. The engineering firm, the architectural firm, is going to really be critical, though, as far as telling you what they need to look at to see and to drop a design and give you a good scope that can be dialed in by a contractor who's bidding on it. The more vague the scope is, the broader your pricing is going to be, and the more exposed you're going to be as a homeowners association. So it's in your interest to get it as dialed in as you can.
Okay, do it yourself. These are some interesting ones. Okay, whether it's tile projects or window replacement projects, etc. Should we let our residents install their own bathroom tile? It's usually required that they do by the bylaws, but what if they hire someone who does a bad job, or worse, just tile over a common element like a window? So this one we had to do a double take on. So here we're outside this window. It looks like the shades are pulled or they got paper over it or something. We're working on this plywood and siding, and we find some damage below the window, but we also find a whole bunch of damage off to the right of the window. So we go inside and look, and this red outline is where the window's supposed to be. So somebody just tiled over the window. They left everything in there and said, I want my bathroom to look this way. I don't want a pesky window in my bathroom. I'm just going to tile over it. So here's the damage in that lower left photo of, when they did a bad job, and it looks like the tile sub they hired didn't put waterproofing correctly underneath the tile, and it's made just a big mess. If this is a ground floor unit, if it were on the third floor, it would be screwing up the second and first floor. And so it's very similar to a window replacement. A lot of associations look to pass the buck and they say residents are responsible for their own windows. You deal with it. And we get a variety of installation techniques, and lowest bidder wins. And so we've got leaking windows now on the third floor that are damaging the second floor and first floor, and it just makes a big pain. So the solution we've done for some of these associations is providing a recipe, if you will. Here's how to put in your windows correctly. Here's the products to use. Here's how to do it. Here's a few details, and you put it on a shelf. And when people go to do that, the association says, thou shalt follow these details. Now, whether they do or not, who knows? But you could do the same thing with tile, saying, hey, we know it's your bathroom, you need to pay for it, but make sure your contractor is putting a proper waterproofing barrier under it so it doesn't damage other things. So do you see stuff like this, Brian? I imagine you do.
Yeah, we see plenty of damage to buildings from interior components that are done poorly. This can be really hard to prevent when the residents own the interior finishes. They're doing models. Inspections typically aren't efficient. There's not really a way to get a contractor or an expert in there every time to check something like that. Education is probably the best solution in advance, and then controlling the liability after it happens. Now, by the time we find it, we're taking siding off, we're opening up these walls and we see the damage is already done. We have a contract with the homeowners association, so we can only charge the homeowners association. Now, whether the association turns around and charges the homeowner, that's between them. That we don't have any control of it. But when we get into that, we've got to repair it. We can't put our siding back over damage like that. And so it does create challenges and problems to these projects, and it's something to be aware of.
Here comes Form 17. So it's just what we're going to talk about today is 3 sections. Section 4, Section 6, Section 10. What is the biggest change? And is it just question 10?
To me, I absolutely think it's question 10, which basically is asking a seller, is there anything else a buyer should know about your property? And that is a very wide question. So
Right.
There are little changes in there, but to me, fundamentally, that's the biggest one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go through it. These are Form 17 is about the borrower of the specific unit, or not the borrower, the seller of the specific unit. And this other form we'll talk about is more about the property. And so I wanted to differentiate those two. But we go on to the next piece, especially for condos. Is there an HOA involved here? Are there regular assessments? How much are they? And watch out for number 6. Are there any pending special assessments? And so I think that is a change too. Special assessments, again, I'm not a lawyer, but reading some bylaws, it'll say special assessment is defined as yada, yada, yada. And typically it's voted in, it's imposed, this is a special assessment from this date forward. So pending special assessment maybe doesn't need to be voted in. It's talked about, it's being bantered about. There's emails going back and forth. There's board meeting minutes happening, and the pending special assessment. So if you're on the board or you're on the architectural committee, and you are telling somebody, hey, we're going to have to start doing an assessment here. So for our community manager friends, I think Monica will tell you, well, let me just ask her, how does the seller know if there's a pending special assessment? They're not on the board. And so if they say no, are they going to get in trouble? So what would you advise your seller to do, Monica?
Well, first of all, I don't advise how they fill it out. That's not something I'm allowed to do because that is practicing law. What I would have them do is fill it out to the best of their ability and as accurately as possible. And typically, if there's been any assessment prior to mutual contract between a buyer and seller, they have to disclose that. And I would just encourage them to go the next step, contact their HOA manager, contact their HOA lawyer, get those things in writing. Like you said, the last thing you want is for a buyer to come back and figure it out that happened. And, a court, even if the seller maybe didn't know, maybe they've been out of the country for 6 months, maybe they're not checking their email, but if a court says, hey, you should have known, or a person would reasonably know by looking at HOA documents or meeting minutes, then there's a potential they could be held liable. So even though I can't sort of advise exactly what that pertains to, I would definitely have them do a risk assessment and minimize their liability as much as possible.
Right. And so, yeah, here's the email from our manager saying there's no pending special assessments coming. And so managers, pay attention, think about this a little bit. How are you using this email? Okay, great, because it's going into this Form 17 disclosure. So let's see. I'm not going to talk about Form 17 too much. But this last one, this full disclosure by seller, just the name of number 10 is ominous. Are there any other existing material defects affecting the property that a prospective buyer should know about? To me, that's just such a leading question. But this is the big change, I think. And this is kind of the ollie oxen for you. You got to tell us everything you know, because it may be material and it may affect this sale. One more thing for board members who are selling, watch out for your emails, watch out for your board meeting minutes, watch out for any kind of conversation that you had that you're not disclosing. We run into a lot of it. This property has problems. It's a big assessment. I'm just going to sell. See you later. And it's like, ooh, you have an email full of conversation about all this stuff. And so we want you to be safe and understand what you're doing here.
I have seen and witnessed lawsuits that were successful over misrepresentation on the Form 17. I don't know if you both have as well, but there is liability. So, being as complete and accurate as possible is really important.
This is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. And Fannie and Freddie are the secondary loan buyers of every 30-year mortgage, about 85% of them. And so it's the government program that carries the mortgage. And so Caliber will sell you a loan and then service that loan, but they don't carry the 30 years of debt. They sell it to the secondary market like everybody else does, or a majority does. And so we have to fit what goes into this loan program. And so this appears to be a direct result out of the Florida condominium collapse in Surfside, whereas if you follow that at all, lots of units in one big building, the building collapses, and the part that didn't collapse gets demolished anyway because it's dangerous and it needs to be torn down. So the mortgages in that building don't have anything left to claim against, and a lot of mortgages lost everything if there wasn't any insurance proceeds, et cetera, and that's a whole nother topic. Here comes a banking regulation that affects all 50 states. This form says all 50 states, if you want a loan, you're going to do this, period.
Yeah, there's just, it came out really fast, like you said. So there was, some alerts and trying to figure out, how we're going to use the form. What are we going to do with this? I also think part of the big problem was trying to get the information from the HOA boards, right, and management companies, because they weren't prepared to provide this information. So that did hold up some of our transactions. I mean, my hope would be that the boards and management companies would get in a place where they could all have this information at their fingertips and either do it once and not have to keep recreating it. So it's not extra work when they do the questionnaire. But I know that that's going to take a lot of work for everybody to get to that point. So, we don't come up with an action plan in one sitting, right? So this is a long process. So if a board doesn't have this started already, I don't think it's going to happen overnight, right? So that's being, preventative in this is going to be huge, because you want to be able to be on that good list.
My advice to an HOA or an owner is to be involved in this process. Find out where your HOA is with this process. A lot of agents who have never heard of this. I had not heard about this. And as a seller, as an owner, get involved in your HOA, read your meeting minutes, vote, get on the board. The head in the sand is not going to work anymore. And unfortunately, by the time you figure out what's going on, it may be too late.
I had an inspection. It passed all the tests. A month later, I found rot in my walls. $8,000 for repairs. Not awesome. What could I have done differently? It raises a couple of questions in my mind. First question is the typical home inspection. When you're going through a pre-purchase process, you'll have a home inspector go out, and all of those are visual only. They're not even supposed to move the couch to look behind the couch. Here's why: the seller hasn't sold the house yet. It's not the buyer's property. The buyer can't go diving in and damaging the walls and opening things up, and the seller doesn't, frankly, want them to, because if they find something, they have to disclose it to all the new buyers because now they know about it. So that's why all these purchase inspections are visual in nature only. They wouldn't be able to see rot in the walls. Now, a trained eye can start seeing stains or cracks, and we're suspicious about it. And obviously, invasive inspections would have revealed rot in the walls or mold inside the walls or problem inside the walls. So That's what we could have done differently there. Okay, yeah, this is a good one. A lot of our community's owners wanted to sell as soon as they found out that there would be a construction repair going on for the next 2 years. Are they allowed to just up and leave when we are in the process of getting a loan and making repairs? No, lock them in their unit. Don't let them leave. No, I shouldn't say that, but joking. Yes, of course, they're allowed to come and go. It's their unit. They can sell, they can move on. The issue here is disclosure. They know a potential assessment might be coming. They know a project is coming. And then even especially if they're on the board, they really got to see the consultants' reports and maybe some contractor bids, and they got to get an idea that this would be $1 million project. And then all of a sudden they moved and sold. We see that a lot. What is in being on a board, Jill? What's your, I mean, you've seen it happen. What's your
Absolutely.
insight there?
And I just have to kind of chuckle because actually there's been some work lately in our building, and I kind of, jokingly say to the project manager, please let me know if you find anything.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'd say to that. Obviously, anyone who's going to buy a condo, they should definitely be looking at minutes and things like that to see if there's anything going on. But as far as owners wanting to leave, what I would say is wait until it's complete. The value of your property is going to go way up. Just hang in there and sell. And that's the one advantage with having an association loan. You can just make payments until it's complete and then put it on the market, and guaranteed you're going to get far greater value than if you try to sell with with work that needs to be done. The other thing too that I have heard owners be concerned about is having an assessment, having the assessment already in place. You're far worse off for an owner, potential buyer, to know there's a problem, but the assessment isn't in place. They don't know what they're getting into. So you're really way better off. Get the work done, get the assessment in place, get it financed if you can. And then the owners, if they're smart, will stick around, wait and sell, have some options anyways.
Okay, next question. We're a 15-unit townhome complex that will need a complete facelift in the next year or so. Half of our residents want to get personal loans so they can write off the interest. What is the advantage of taking out an HOA loan versus a private loan? Yeah, Jill, back to you.
That's a really good question. There's a lot of advantages, and that you're exactly right. It's not interest to the owners for association loan. Here's the pros and cons, of course. With a home equity loan or a refinance, you're going to have all the fees that are associated with that. You're going to have a lien on your property. You're going to have credit checks. Some people aren't going to qualify or have the equity for a home loan or a refinance. But if they do and they want to go that route, that's great. The bank doesn't care, right? The advantages to the association loan is there's no lien on your property.
Mhm.
There's no guarantors. It doesn't affect your credit. There's all those underwriting fees to you individually associated with it, because we're actually making the loan to the association. It's not to individual homeowners. So you have your choice.
Our townhome owners are divided on funding for a big capital improvement project. We have one group wanting to get an HOA loan, and we have another group who want to pay the special assessment lump sum on their own. Can you blend these two funding options? Yes. Yeah. So what my take on that, and we see that of the loan is just an ability to spread that special assessment over a period of years so that everyone can participate. If somebody doesn't want to participate in the loan process and reach into their left-hand desk drawer and write a check, like we talked about this early on, great, they can do that. It's called a prepay. And what happens there's always a percentage of prepays. And as you start the project, you may have 20% of the budget's already prepay. So that first 1 or 2 or 3 pay applications, we're taking that out of prepay. You haven't even started borrowing money yet. You have pre-approval, but you haven't even started the ticker from ticking on interest. So then by, the mid of the job, then you start pulling the loan out. And so there's some nuances of, just because you paid up front doesn't mean, like we said, we're going back for a second round two, you'll have to pay that round two as well. But you won't, if you won't have to pay the interest, you won't have to be a part of that process. You can write a check. So Jill, what's your take on that?
Wow, you did that really well, Jen.
Oh, hey,
some
well.
more of my meetings. No, you know what? I like to describe my commitment as an insurance policy. Basically, you need to know you have those funds available so that you can sign contracts. And worst case scenario, nobody writes that check. The bank is willing to give you the money, but we have no minimum amount of that commitment you have to take. So typically how you see this work is, all right, owners, here's your share of the assessment. You have 90 days to pay it in full. You're done. For those of you who don't want to write that check, here's the monthly payments. So yeah, absolutely. It's still all one loan. It's still all nobody's treated any differently. It's just not everyone needs to take the monthly payment option.
Weep holes. Our house was built in 2005 and our weep holes have some sort of felt material. Bonus plug, that's not felt material, it's junk. So is that common? They don't have any felt in them, but that has to do with the cleaning of the window track. They're filthy and disgusting and mud clogged into them. So you're growing some kind of fibrous goo in your window track, and we'll get into that. So how do we go about unclogging the window weeps? Last but not least, how do we contact the professional? What are they listed under in the yellow pages or Google search? So let's talk about that. A window weep, think of it as a drain. It is a drain for water to get out. So I've got a handy dandy window cut. Here's the sliding portion of my window. And why I need a weep is the water will get into this track and need to get out. And in this particular product, it can get into this track and then it runs through to come out this weep hole. And so we want to keep that clean and clean it out. Wait a second for that, but we've got a video on that. So window weeps and trickle vents. I'm going to jump around in the video. I'm not going to watch the whole thing, but Justin is going to teach us how to take our windows out.
Maintain the exterior of your window or clean the outside of your window. There's a real simple way to open this guy up and remove the operable pane. So you want to open it to the fully open position. And what you want to do is grab both sides of the window and lift it up. And you can see the bottom of the window will now clear the bottom of the track on the sill. Once you're able to do that, the window comes right on out. You're able to clean the back side of the window. And if you can reach and you feel comfortable, you can clean this portion of the window as well. So if you do have a screen on your window, and this does not because we're during a painting phase, but what you do is you'd grab your window and there's two tabs on the screen and you'd pull that screen to the side, push it out, and that would come out just as the window did. So we would remove the screen, turn it sideways and pull it on into the interior, set it down, and then do your window maintenance. And putting it back is as simple as taking it out. You want to make sure it's in its open position. And I'm sliding it up into the upper track here. Want to be sure not to catch the curtains in there. Okay, now we're situated, lift it up, set it down, and it's good to go.
Perfect.
So talking about
forward to
maintain your weep holes, what you're going to want to do is first of all, you're going to want to locate them. This is your weep hole. This is going to drain any excess water from the interior or anything that gets into the sill. It's going to drain out through these holes. There's one located here on the left, and there's one located over here to the right. Now, what's inside the weep holes is just a small plastic damper. And what I've got here is just a paper clip that I've straightened out one of the arms on, regular basic paper clip. And so you want to get in here and you want to get up underneath your damper. And as you can see, there's a little bit of residual water in there, and that's okay. But you want to get in there and make sure that this paper clip is clear. And anything that is inside the track of the window, you want to be able to get it out of there. So since this window is new, there's not a lot of debris, but if you wanted to maintain your window, this is how you do it. And that's about it.
That's how we maintain our window trims or our window trickle vents. And so again, these videos are coming out of our resource center. But like I said, I have a live demo here. So what we're going to do, Justin showed us how to pick at it from the exterior. I don't want to pick at it from the exterior. That's a pain. I have to get on a ladder. So I'm going to take out the window like he did. I'm going to lift it out. Here comes the window. Then you're going to look into the bottom here and you're going to see this plastic track. All this is a snap-in track. So I'm going to somehow grab onto the edge of it with a pair of pliers or a screwdriver, and I'm going to go pop and take it out. That's all this is. So it's a cover. It's a beauty cap, if you will, that you can see how they sit up inside there and they stand on little legs. But you can see the trough that the water goes into and goes into that little weep hole in there. I don't know if I'm showing the video well or not, but now you'll see all this gunk. You'll see lint, you'll see pine needles, you'll see just dirt, dust bunnies, etc., mixed with a little water. It might even be moldy in there. It's nasty. So then take a rag, clean that out, squirt, 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 Lysol, whatever, clean it up. While you're in there, you can actually see the welded frame of the window. So these vinyl windows are welded together. Metal windows are caulked or sealant. So if you have a metal window and you're pulling that open, check your corners. And if they're cracked or open, or well, if you have either kind of window, if you have any kind of cracks in there, we have this trough full of water, right? So we don't want it leaking into the framing. So put a little sealant on there. Probably won't have to do that. But as far as cleaning out your window tracks, that's how you do it. Snap your piece right back in. Snap, put your window back in. I'm all done. And I don't have a tray of yucky stuff in there. So it'll all get cleaned out and your windows will work better. They'll be happy. So that's how we take care of weep holes. All right, clarity call. These are my secret built-in water breaks. So not so secret anymore, but if you have one of those scanners, just like your restaurant menus nowadays, you just take a picture of that and this will all set you up. But if you want to talk one-on-one to me, free conversation, 15 minutes, get some specific advice for your building, do it, set it up. This takes you right to the scheduling program. You can find out that Thursday at 10:15 works for me, and you can book that time, just like booking your dentist appointment these days. So let's get on a call. Let's talk about it. We'll see if we're the right fit for you. We'll see if, that's even what we do. Maybe it's not what we do, and we can recommend you to a better, company that's more specific in what you need. But let's get on a call and we'll go from there. So. Okay, we know we need a visual inspection plus a reserve study. Which one should we do first? What if we can only afford to do one? Are there major differences between the two? And this graphic that you see here is from Garrett and Association Reserves, and it's on their website. So it's a great little thing. We won't go through all of them, but what should we do, Garrett?
Well, we certainly recommend each association get both, really, especially if they're considering it, they're probably in need of both. Obviously the reserve study is a lot more economical in cost. Our average fee is $1,300, and so we feel it's a very well valued, and it should be affordable for any community. It's best done after you get all your professional evaluations and orders in place, cost estimates and all that, but we can certainly help you plan for your future without those. However, they're both done together or subsequently.
So the question, we can only do one of these this year. You're saying go ahead and do your envelope evaluation, and then you guys can use that information because you'll learn about the structure, and is there water damage, and what really is the condition of the siding underneath that? Because typical envelopes inspections, we're pulling things off, or we're getting a little invasive. And I think you're let's see, where's intrusive destructive testing, the third from the bottom. And so reserve studies are not invasive, they're visual only. So
Right.
So that's good.
Our observations are purely visual. We're looking for
Mhm.
obvious or deferred maintenance, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And in realm of what you guys do as far as intrusive analysis and removing the siding and really getting into the nuts and bolts of things,
Mhm.
your evaluation is going to add a lot of accuracy to our reports because, again, we are very limited. We are budget experts, not building envelope experts.
What Garrett was saying is, $1,500 will get you an average reserve study price. I would say our envelope price is probably not 10 times that, but it ranges depending on, how big your property is and what your cladding type is. Obviously, vinyl siding is easier to look under than brick or stucco. But for that, in that $3,500 ballpark, we can do a visual with maybe some peekaboo views, and maybe 5,000 to 7,000. We're up into the heavier duty, bigger, looking around at several openings. And so that can kind of give people a guideline for that. But if you're only a year out, it sounds like doing the envelope first and then the reserve study, and really having the reserve study rely on what the envelope said, even if it's a visual inspection. So yeah, that makes sense to me.
How we look at on a lending side is that we want to make sure there is enough reserve contributions going in there on an annual basis that not only will the loan take care of the big major projects, but you'll still be able to take care of those maintenance projects, the recoating of your decks or whatever, during the term of your loan. So it's very important. Do you have to be 70% funded or 100% funded? No, but you definitely need to be funded.
Yeah. And what about, we hear some board members saying, I'm not going to bankroll the future residents, fixes. Just call me when you need an assessment. I don't want my money sitting in some account somewhere, and if I decide to move, I can never get it out. As a board member, how do you deal with that? Or how do you alleviate that fear or manage that fear?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I have to tell you that I used to be one of those owners who said, I'm not prepaying anything.
Right.
My building I was an original owner, and we didn't have our first reserve study for 12 years. Well, when I started financing condo remediation projects about 5 years ago, I changed my tune, and I changed it really quickly. That is no way to run an association or your reserves. You may feel like you can write the check, but your neighbors might not be able to.
Right.
And you want to be able to be sure that everybody's treated equitably and fairly, and fund the reserve so that no one's facing big assessments.
What kind of prep work should we do to get ready for a special assessment? And the concept of this, where we as consultants, when we're working with the board, we hear the board talk about, we got this contractor bid for $650,000. So we're going to go get a loan for $650,000. And I'm like, ooh, wait, stop. If you're in Washington, what about sales tax? That's 10.2, 10.3%. What about a building permit? What about, a manager fee or a contractor, consultant, manager, bank, legal? All these guys have fees, whether it's loan fees or, management fees, things like that. What about contingencies? So let's talk about what kind of prep work should we get ready for a special assessment. Colleen, do you want to jump into that first?
Sure. Yeah. So this was actually a budget provided by a management company that I was working with, actually. And I thought it really was a great way to break out what the full project was going to look like. So like you were saying, I just recommend that, the bank is going to want to know what the full project budget is. And so that's going to include hard costs and soft costs. And so that's where you really do have to take a look at what is the bank's loan fee? What are those other costs that, you may not have thought about? And should that be included in the actual loan amount? A lot of times those costs are pretty significant and your reserves may be earmarked for future projects and not necessarily for these additional costs. And so it really should be rolled into that loan amount, and you want to be able to relay that to your banker when you're asking for the loan.
Now, on top of the budget, before getting to the budget piece, you want to really make sure that you've done your due diligence on the investigations on your building. You want to do the visual inspections, and then you also want to make sure that your consultant is doing whatever intrusive investigations and opening up whatever they may need to open up to get a better idea of what's happening, maybe underneath your siding or underneath your top level of roofing or whatever it may be, in case there's maybe more than what they can see from the outside. Because that special assessment that maybe was going to be $100,000 could be $200,000, and you want to know that before you special assess, because the last thing you want to have happen is not have enough money and have to special assess a second time.
So again, communicating, this is kind of another one of those pieces. Communicating with the HOA. We have a special assessment coming, but we don't know all the details yet. Yeah, this is I'm really worried about it. I'm afraid the owners are going to start asking a bunch of questions the board management don't know how to answer. I'd rather wait, gather more information from a lender and our consultant before we share too much. When am I obligated to break the news? So it's kind of a part A, part B that we're talking about here. And my first inkling is to say, you know what, it's just like planning for a party or an event. It's save the date. We know we're going to be doing this on this date. We know this needs to happen. More information is going to come as we get more information, but here's what we're doing. We've engaged with the consultant. We've engaged with the bank. We know we got to replace these roofs. We just know it. We don't know the total amount yet. We don't know when it's quite going to start, but that's going to start rolling out. So stay tuned for more info. Becky, how about you? How would you help this person who's saying, I just want to wait. I don't want to share too much?
Yeah, I would look at the governing documents to see what's required for the association. I know that most governing documents will say for meetings, the ratification meeting, and that's a little bit ahead of what we're talking about now, but for the ratification meeting, it will say when the document invitation needs to be mailed to ownership. And then as far as when am I obligated to break the news, it's my understanding that the state of Washington does have a rule or a state statute about that. And I would check with an attorney, depending on which state you're in, if there is a state statute for that, if there is one.
Mm-hmm. And so that's when am I obligated to share the news?
Yeah,
so we're kind
I
of stuck
can't
with
stress enough how important it is that if there is a discussion about a special assessment or a large project, discussing it anytime there is a board meeting or anytime communication goes out. And if really it's a large project, schedule a meeting or put a special flyer out for ownership, because people want to know. And if it is something like decks or roofs, and people are going to see consultants and contractors on site, they're going to want to know what's going on. God forbid it's any kind of a life safety issue. People definitely need to know that it's going on for that sort of a thing. But you'll have a more contentious special assessment the longer you wait to break the news. And that is the last thing that you want, because that's hard to dig out of with ownership.
It's a trust thing. Yeah, my heart went out to this question, and I was like, just share, just come, not come clean, but just start talking about it. Remove the stigma or fear around your building. Colleen, do you have anything with?
I think that honestly, it really does give owners the opportunity to make a decision early on, if they want to stay in the community, if they want to get more involved in what the project looks like, maybe they want to be more active and be in more of the board meetings so they understand the project better. I think it's just, the more information you can give them up front, the more understanding they will be as the project, moves along. So I just think it's definitely important to keep everybody on the same page and transparency as much as possible. So
yeah, totally.
we've got wall work to do in every unit, but only some units have work done in their ceilings. We try to minimize the amount of openings that we do in the unit. So when we come into these projects, every building's laid out differently. Their configurations are all different. So we need to get in there. We look at where the plumbing's at, and then we kind of make an assessment and figure out the quickest route with the least impact to unit owners.
Yeah. And I think what you're talking about is here, we looked at a side view of a building. Now we're going to look at a floor plan of a unit. And so we will go through and say, here's your bathrooms, here's your wet walls there. There's another bathroom over here. How do we get over here and there? And so we come up with a detailed plan of blue are areas where the ceiling's going to get affected, yellow are wall areas. So in this unit, we're working in the kitchen around the sink. We will have a ceiling channel going over to here. Then it'll dog leg over to here, dog leg over to there to the bathroom. And then it'll take a corner there. It'll come into the laundry and it'll go to that bathroom. But that is the activity, plumbing activity or disturbance in that unit. So you can see living room stays, bedrooms pretty much stay. Both bathrooms maybe have the ceiling pulled down, but in these back-to-back bathrooms, typically we can just work on one side of the wall and get to it. Sometimes there's a hallway or a bedroom wall where we can go that direction. Wow. And so it's cheaper going through the drywall of the bedroom than going through the tile of the shower surround.
A lot of times we end up having a closet backed right up against the bathroom in the unit. So right. Ultimately that's the worst part because everybody has all their stuff in their closet and we're like, oh, hey, you don't have to move all this stuff. But then all of a sudden we ask them to empty their closet out and it's always like these big closets with everything in them. So that's, yeah, sorry. A picture's worth 1,000 words.
Picture is, yeah. So scheduling communication on the right side is an example of a communication thing we put out. Left side, we're talking about, notifications, unit entry and turning off key services are usually things that are talked about in your bylaws. So you have a 48-hour notice to enter, you have a 48-hour notice to turn off water and things like that. So there's a lot of these little, milestones and things that we have to communicate about and post about and do that. So kind of explaining that. Jared, do you have anything to add to that?
We do before we do the actual physical work in the project, we do a project summary walk. And during that walk, we identify all the locations and create another document. That's the snippet on the right side was taken from that. Within that project summary, it's got all the areas that you need to clear out. Unfortunately, it's usually that master closet or part of it, and that sucks. But it also has all the key dates and a lot of the information in here. And it's talking about turning the water off. It's at minimum 48 hours notice. Usually we know that a week or two in advance when they're working on the units to when they're going to do the switch over. So that way we give owners plenty of advance notice. When the water's turned off, it's usually between the hours of 8:30 and 4 in the afternoon. The water is always on at night. Your bathrooms and kitchens and laundry rooms are always usable every night after 4 o'clock, 4:30.
Yeah. How much extra work is that for the plumbers to, stub up temporary fittings so that this person can turn their old plumbing back on and this person has new plumbing? Does that add a lot to the cost, or is it pretty insignificant? It's just a function of scheduling and getting a contract.
Doing that, working in the occupied units adds time to the overall schedule. And that's what takes these projects a little bit longer, because when they come in the morning, they've got to put all that protection out, cover everything up, just like the Dexter show, get everything covered up. That Dexter reference, that's for Halloween, everybody. Get everything covered up. And then they can do the work, and they have to plan the amount of work they can do in a day. So that way, by the end of the day, they can stop the work that they're doing and then take down all the protection and make sure that the unit's clean and it's usable. And that way, when you come home from work at 4 or 5 o'clock, if you need to take a shower, you can take a shower. You want to start cooking dinner, you can be in the kitchen cooking dinner and everything. So there is that added time. But they also do it in a way to where owners don't need to move out. The only time you'd need to be out is if there's abatement required.
What is, next question from Anonymous, what is the association's liability if we don't get the motion passed to replace plumbing that has caused repeated active leaks? Ooh, that's a lawyer thing. Remember, we're not giving legal advice, but from what I understand, the association, and again, 99% of these bylaws and governing documents I have read, I haven't read yours, but start there, says the association shall maintain. Doesn't say when we have money, when we'll get around to it. So you have a duty, you shall maintain. So how do we do that? We pass a motion for a bigger budget or, a special assessment, et cetera. If that motion is voted down by the people, well, I think the board is kind of off the hook, but they've done what the board is supposed to do. We are trying to do this. We're going to get a motion. You as the association have voted it down. I think that's how the democracy works there, but definitely reach out to your HOA attorney and don't take my word for it. But
The issue they've been getting hit with though, Jens, is my understanding is the properties that have had frequent water losses, it's their insurance company, their insurance deductible that used to be $10,000, in some cases creeping up $75,000, $100,000 for a water loss.
Yeah. So the insurer says, wait a minute, how many plumbing losses have you had this year? We notice all your plumbing is failing and breaking and dripping. And what Jared's saying, it used to cost $10,000 for an annual policy. Now it's going to cost $100,000 because the insurance company's tired of paying out these claims. And then the insurance company can also walk away too. Until you get this fixed, we're not going to reinsure you. And so those are things you need to think about. So, okay, do you obtain permits if necessary? Absolutely.
Yes.
This is a plumbing, drinking water, health condition. So we absolutely want the building department to oversee it, bless it, make sure it's done right by licensed professionals. It's not, my brother's a plumber and he can stick this stuff together. It's really easy. I watched a YouTube video. No, don't do that. And so we will get the permits or we'll work with the contractor to get the permits. Bottom line, at the end of this job, you will have complete permits, sign-offs, all the documents so that you can go back like Coy, say, here's the 2013 information. It's all on in 2013, we were still using, maybe we've moved on from DVDs. You might have a DVD of information, but you'll have a thumb drive or a link, hopefully Dropbox or OneDrive still around in 9 years. But anyway, you get the idea. You'll have full documentation. Let's talk about some summary slides here. So from a budget summary, June, we're going to do preliminary budgets. We're going to get the manager's going to get those together. The board is going to review the budgets in July. August, we're going to have any revisions. September, we're going to have board approval. October, HOA budget approval. Here's the HOA meeting. And November, we're going to start working on things. So there's float built into this. Why? We do that on purpose, just in case we got to skip the August meeting. Budget revisions, we're taking the month off. Jen said to take the month off and have a party. Okay, great. Do your budget revisions in September. But you're also getting bids. June, July, August, we're getting bids for next year. And we're making our vendors hold those numbers. And we're talking to them about, let's make sure we get that, let's get a good number. So here's kind of a budget summary, just a reminder. And then in Q4, board activity slows down when the budget's been exhausted. We start thinking about next year. We might be finishing up some last minute items to use up budget. So that's kind of a budget Q4-ish kind of thing. So, and you're getting bids all summer for this extra work. So here's your budget. Put that on your calendar. I want to be reviewing budgets and I want the board to be approving the budget in September. And so that we can go to that October HOA meeting. Okay. Here is a maintenance schedule. And so this is what we put in our maintenance plan that some states require. So we kind of break it down. We talk about different types of siding and cladding, maybe some different types of roof, some painted trim or siding or things, sealants, deck membranes. And we say spring and fall, annual, every 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Now, granted, this kind of thinking is in a perfect void. And so we also have post-storm. And so, hey, I looked at it last year, so I don't have to look at it again. Well, you just had a big storm, and so you better look at it again. And so just take that observation. So the inspect can be lightweight, and especially on an annual basis. And this is where we are pushing you to do your little DIY. Walk around, look, get a cup of coffee, make the association buy you a cup of coffee. You walk around, sip your coffee, take some pictures with your phone and go, look pretty good. This stuff turns into your baseline, and it can turn into an inspection if you just turn it into an inspection of, I walked the site, I visually reviewed, here's the photos, I don't find any areas of concern. Here's what I saw at this point in time. So that, if you're ever asked or challenged, hey, were you guys ever even paying attention? Oh yeah. We're volunteers, but we used this guide that was put together. We used this inspection schedule plan that was put together. We did our own little thing. Here it is. Everybody can read it. And maybe every other year or every 3 years, we hire a consultant to confirm. And then you give those reports to the consultant. Hey, here's what we've been doing. It's not, super high tech engineering, but gives you a baseline. So I can come to that building and go, what's this crack doing here? Oh, this crack's been here for quite a while. So I'll be like, okay, why isn't it sealed? Man, we want to get that sealed to keep water out, but very helpful. And it builds up your list of information and passes it on to the next board. And you can use it for liability protection because it's an inspection. So we have a little disclaimer down there. Make sure you restain and recode as needed. We say it's expected to last 30 years. Well, or you only need to tuck point and reseal every 5 years. Well, maybe you should look at it before, and that's why we're looking at it every year. Maybe it'll last 4, maybe it'll last 10, but 5 years is a rule of thumb, and 40 years is a rule of thumb. We all know buildings in the historic part of town that are 100 years old, and they have brick on them, and so they've lasted 100 years. And so just use that common sense.